क्या देख रहे हो भाई? बिग बॉस? क्या देखते हो ये सब? इसको भाई ईयरफोन लगा लेना। काच खाए बिचुआ। कई सदी पहले you are given an integer and there is an you are given an integer and there is an undirected graph with n vertices number from 0 to n minus 1. Okay, so 0 to n minus 1. ठीक है. You are also given an integer array edges. Okay, denotes the uh, denotes that there exist at underlying edge connecting to A1 AI to BI. Return the numbers of complete connected component of the graph. A connected component is a subgraph of a graph that is there exists path between two vertices and vertices outside the subgraph. Connected components said to be complete if there exists an edge between the so क्या निकालना है? You are given an integer array and there is an undirected graph with the vertices from 0 to n minus 1. You are given an integer array edge where AI is equal to AI BI denotes that there exists an undirected edge connecting V vertices AI and BI. Return the number of complete connected component of the graph. complete connected component. ग्राफ तो भाई क्रेजी है. So a connected component of a graph is a graph in which there exists a path between any two vertices. Okay. So all connected to all, I guess. There exists a path in which there exists a path between any two vertices, and no vertex of the graph shares an edge with a vertex outside the. Okay, so all to all, and isolation, I guess. Hello, someone is watching. All to all plus isolation. Okay, so a connected component is said to be complete if there exists an edge between. So example, पहला है तुम्हारा that is 1, okay, 0, 2, 3, I guess. ऐसा ही कुछ है ना. 0, 1, 2, okay. Just clear this. So 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. So 0 के लिए हो जाएगा तुम्हारा 0 से हो जाएगा 1, 2, 1 के लिए हो जाएगा तुम्हारा 1 के लिए हो जाएगा तुम्हारा 2, हाँ 2, 0, 2 के लिए हो जाएगा तुम्हारा 1, 0. So I actually don't know graph that much. Then ये तुम्हारा हो गया. For this, let's suppose हमको start नहीं दिया हुआ है. Given. Oops. एडजेसेंसी लिस्ट बनाते हैं. So someone watching. Okay, so adjacency list. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So मेरे पास है 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So मेरा कैसे हो जाएगा? 1,2 1 के लिए हो जाएगा 0,2 2 के लिए हो जाएगा 0 1 सेट आई गेस सेट यूज़ कर सकता हूँ 3 के लिए हो जाएगा 4 4 के लिए हो जाएगा 3 एंड 5 के लिए हो जाएगा नल so this is what you can let's go with this. Okay. 534. Just take this one. फाइव थ्री फोर सारे एलिमेंट्स मैच करने ज़रूरी हैं या बस साइज कंपेयर करके काम चल जाएगा? सो 5 के लिए मेरे पास बनेगा 5 के लिए क्या बनेगा 3 ओप्स यार इसमें कंट्रोल Z का फीचर डालना पड़ेगा या इरेजर So this is we can come up with अरे नहीं, इतना कुछ लफड़ा भी नहीं है। वेट, वर्तमान आंखों का पानी पानी लेके आ जा भाई। पानी चाहिए क्या भाई तेरे को? नहीं चाहिए क्या?
हिला के देख लेना।
लो, अब हिला के भी हम ही देखें, तुम हमारा हिला के देखो, शायद पानी निकल जाए। वर्तमान आंखों का धोखा है, बहुत सीखने का मौका है। पानी तो बहुत सारा है लग रहा है। लो भाई, कान में डाल लो। वर्तमान आंखों का धोखा है, बहुत सीखने का मौका है। पानी पानी, मैं पानी पानी हो गई। इसको रखो साइड में। लेट्स मेक अ मैप। भोला भाला सासी, जस्ट कंपेयरिंग साइज क्या काम देगा? सबके साइज एक होने चाहिए। बॉडी देख रहे हो, मसल्स हैं, लाड़ दिया गया हमसे। ग्लास पानी कहाँ गया? Lasasi. नशामी में के छोड़े आड़े रे जय भीम लिखा रे सिस्सी पे वीआईपी नंबर कारा के मानक आनक से जो छोड़ दे कुछ मारा के 0 1 2 3 4 where is 5 5 got in no edge इसका भी कुछ देखना पड़ेगा 6 नोट 6 minus 5 यानी कि 4 साइज क्या है बचा कुचा प्लस करना पड़ेगा 0 से 1 2 1 से 2 0 3 का 4 5 4 का 3 5 का 3 here is the anomaly कैसे भाई अनुराग जिंदगी ये जिंदगी ना मिलेगी दोबारा
इसलिए तो बोलते हैं हिलाओ रोज बात कार
अब हमको किसी तरह पता लगाना है Why not use this one only? डाउट है यार,
गूगल फॉर्म खुल क्यों नहीं रहा है? उस टाइम तो खुल रहा था, अभी नहीं खुल रहा है।
क्लोज हो गया होगा।
हाँ?
We are sorry, we can't you can't access the item because it violates our term. गूगल इसको बैन कर दिया। गूगल का पॉलिसी मतलब वो वायलेट कर रहा है, हो सकता है कुछ गड़बड़ कर रहा हो वो।
इसका मतलब फॉल्स था ना?
अगर कुछ स्कैम कर रहा हो, कुछ उलझलूल काम हो रहा हो,
मतलब मेरे लाइफ में साला उधर नहीं सामान क्यों आता है? सही सामान क्यों नहीं आता है?
आएगा भाई, सब आएगा। टेंशन क्यों लेता है तू? टेंशन नक्कू लेने का लाइफ में टेंशन देने का, क्या समझे?
ठीक है भाई, तो सब देने का।
रन क्या हो गया?
जीत गए भाई।
जीत भी गया? मैं आज कहीं प्रिडिक्शन देखा था, ठीक है, इंस्टाग्राम पे नहीं होते वीडियो डालते हैं कि ये जीतेगा वो जीतेगा, उसमें पहला ही मैच लिखा हुआ था कि केकेआर जीतेगा। बताओ, पहले ही मैच में फुसका हो गया उसका बेचारे का। सोचा होगा पब्लिक को स्कैम करेंगे।
मुंबई का जो मलिक है ना, उसका बहुत ज़्यादा लड़ता है।
नॉट आउट खेला है भाई विराट कोहली।
मुंबई का जो मलिक है ना,
मालिक मानी,
नहीं वो प्रेडिक्शन देता है, उसका बहुत तगड़ा है। हम उसे-
मुंबई का मालिक तो अंबानी है भाई।
मालिक नहीं, मलिक
मलिक कौन है
देखा है, एक टेलीग्राम पे वो देता है।
भाई? ये सब ना खाली चुतिया होता
अरे
है
हम उससे जीते हैं भाई, कोको
भाई। पता है ये स्कीम कैसे चलता है?
अभी देखो, अभी
सुनो,
महीने
हम
तो
बता
हमारा पैसा
नहीं
आया और
हम
अभी
बता
कैसे
हम
पैसा
बता रहे
आता है?
तुमको ये सब स्कीम कैसे
हाँ, तो
चलता
आधा ही हो
है।
जाएंगे, नहीं तो फिर से
सुनो
दूसरा
भाई,
करेंगे।
स्कीम सुनो, इन लोग कैसे करता है।
हम्म,
आधा लोग को बोलेगा ये और आधा लोग को बोलेगा वो, ठीक है। आधा लोग को बोलेगा केकेआर, आधा लोग को बोलेगा आरसीबी, ठीक है। अब आधा में से आधा तो जीतेगा, आधा का एकदम कॉन्फिडेंस आ गया।
अभी रुपया आ रहा है ना अगले महीने घर से।
हाँ।
खाली प्रोबेबल बैंक जॉब करता करता उड़ा देना। तो अब तो पूरा राजा
भाई
नहीं तो फिर समझ ठीक है।
भाई मत कर, लिटरली बता रहा हूँ
मजाक कर रहे हैं भाई, कोई चुटिया नहीं करोगे।
भाई, मत करो।
रोगे नहीं, कोई चुटिया नहीं है यार।
बात तो इसने बतिया रहे हो।
हम लोग को मोटिवेट कर देते हैं।
ए मार जाएगा।
और जो सलाम खुश हुए। अच्छा कल है ना, कल देखते हैं इसका एचएफ खुलता है कि नहीं लिंक हुआ।
क्या रे छोरे, ए छोरे, छोरा छोरा छोरा, क्या रे छोरे, मार जाएगा, समझ रहे हो तुम, मारे जाओगे भाई। रे भी मलिका रे सस्सी में वीआईपी। Dang it. My name is. अरे यार इसमें यूज़ नहीं कर सकते क्या कंटिन्यू लूप स्किप करने को? चैट जीपीटी से लूप फिक्स करवाना पड़ेगा। नेट का स्पीड चुद गया गुरु। ओके फॉर ईच बना दो भाई। लॉजिक प्रिजर्व होना चाहिए बस। Okay, edge map edge entry set entry map dot entry set key is equal to get entry dot get key value is equal to entry dot get value visitor dot contains key continue flag false add v add key jet size dot v for ent ele in v add ele dot size not equal to jet false break if flag true that is answer plus plus एक कमाया होगा मुझे लगा ही था कि कोई तो ऐसा केस होगा कि मेरे को प्रॉपर जाके चेक करना पड़ेगा सारे एलिमेंट्स को जीरो वन 203132 expected zero out one comma two दिस इज कूल, काफ़ी ओए बजा दें हाँ? अरे स्वामी में अरे वाल्मीकि के छोड़े आ रे जय भीम लिखा रे सिस्सी पे वीआईपी नंबर कारा के बालक से छोड़ देख चमारा के जय भीम लिखा रे सिस्सी पे ले प्रभु जब कोई चीज़ ना जानो अनुराग और फिर भी उसको सॉल्व कर दो तो आनंद तो आता है, क्यों?
बहुत ज़्यादा।
हाँ, चीज़ें नहीं आती हैं फिर भी सॉल्व कर देता हूँ। डैम, कहीं मैं जीनियस तो नहीं? N+M sets. Constant as space. N+M. छोड़े यार रे JB Malika Rapes VIP number. फाइनल बॉस ऑफ ग्राफ तो नहीं है, ठीक ठाक ग्राफ का क्वेश्चन है भाई। सेशन में मालूम के छोड़े यार रे JB Malika ACC पे VIP नंबर। पता नहीं मैंने इनको ऊपर क्यों डिक्लेयर किया, ये दोनों को तो अंदर ही डिक्लेयर कर सकता हूँ। यहाँ पे लोग कुछ क्रेजी कर रहे होंगे। लंबा चौड़ा कोड तो हमारा भी लंबा चौड़ा है। तीन मिस, 3 मिस। तो डीपी क्वेश्चन था, नहीं बना। Need to go somewhere around these lines. ये क्या है? $35, $13। $13.25। बच्चे की जान लोगे क्या? डीपी नहीं। This is the complete deduction of this question. No, no, no hard, no hard. Eh, फालतू क्वेश्चन। Math, math, no math. Linked list. When you head of a linked list and the value x. Given the head of a linked list and the value x, partition it in such that all the nodes less than x come before the nodes greater than x. You should preserve the original relative order of the node in each of the two partition. Example 14325.
Hey everyone, welcome back, and let's write some more neat code today. So today let's solve the problem, count the number of complete components. The idea is that we are given an integer n, which is going to represent the number of vertices in our graph. So you can see that we are given 6, we have 6 vertices here. They are not necessarily a part of a single component though, because that's what this problem is all about. We want to count the number of components, but it's not as straightforward as just counting that like this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3, because there is actually a little rule to this game. We only care about complete connected components, and what that basically means in this problem is that every single vertex a part of a component, so this is one component, this is a separate component, and this is a third component. For all of these components, we sort of just want to count which one of them are actually complete. So looking at the first component, this is how it's going to work. We look at every single vertex in the component to make sure that there is an edge from every single node to every other node in that component. What that means is, just to draw it out, if I have just a single node, well, then that's satisfied. Because like this, what I have circled, there just needs to exist an edge from one node to every other node. We just have a single node here. When we have 2 nodes, we just need one edge connecting them together. When we have 3 nodes, I'm going to draw the node over here, we need 3 edges connecting them together. With 4 nodes, we end up with something kind of like this, where we have an edge going from every other edge. So from this node, we have an edge going to every other edge, same thing here, and same thing here. So that's what we're checking for. And you can see that for each of the components up above, that is true. This one is complete, this one is complete, and this one is complete. So we counted 3 in total. 3 is what we would return. So conceptually, I think what we're trying to do is actually sort of simple, because this is a pretty simple description. But knowing a little bit about graph theory and how to run an actual traversal like DFS or BFS is going to be pretty necessary to solve this problem. That's what I'm going to be walking you through. And I think since this graph is undirected, we could also probably do union find as well, but that's usually more complicated. There's mainly going to be 2 steps to this algorithm. The first is going to be, of course, getting the actual components, like separating them out. We need to be able to somehow distinguish that 5 is a part of its own component, that 0, 1, and 2 are a part of the same component, 3 and 4 are a part of the same component as well. Many, many different ways to do this. DFS, BFS, or union find. There might be some others as well. But I think it's perfectly fine to just use a simple traversal. You can pick whichever one of these is easiest for you, or maybe one of the more difficult ones if you want to practice. But the only thing we're trying to do with this first phase is just split the nodes. So for every node, I could just run a traversal. I could run a DFS starting from every node to get all the components. So for 5, there's nowhere to go. This is its own component. Then maybe I go to 0, I see 0, and then I go to 1, and then I go to 2, and then I say, okay, well, this is a component. There's nothing else to see. Then I go to 3, and then I get the same thing here. And maybe if I revisit the same node that's already been visited, if I got to 2 next, I would see that 2 is already a part of its own component. We don't need to traverse it again. So we could do that just by iterating from 0 up until n minus 1, and just running a DFS for everything on that. The next part is, in my opinion, pretty easy. Once you have all the nodes for a given component, if I got this, if you gave me those nodes, the next thing what I would do is just count the edges and then determine if that component is valid or not. If it is, you increment the count. If it's not, you don't. There's multiple ways to count the edges as well. One thing you could do is compare the number of nodes to the number of edges, because what you can see is happening every single time for each node. Like in a component, if there's n nodes, in this example there's 3, well, for each node there's going to be 2 edges going out of it because it's connected to the other nodes. It's this number minus 1 is going to get you that. So arbitrarily, if I had n nodes, I know each of those nodes is going to have n minus 1 edges coming out of it. So that's pretty much what you could do. For every single node, check that there's n minus 1, where n is the size of that component. There's n minus 1 edges connected to that node. That's pretty much, I think, all I have to say. In terms of time and space, I think it's just going to be dependent on the size of the graph. So it should be the number of vertices plus edges. So I'm going to define my DFS here, but I'm going to show you how I use it first. I'm just going to have a couple variables. One is the vertex that we're going to run the DFS from, and the other is going to be result. I want to show you how I use this function before I implement it, because what I'm going to do is for every single vertex that we have available, I want to run a DFS on it. I want to say DFS from this vertex, and I'm going to pass in an empty array. And what this array is going to be is all of the nodes that belong to this component, that belong to the one connected to this node. So it's going to return that array that I'm passing in here. You're probably wondering, why don't I just create the array inside of there? Well, it's recursive, so that would be less efficient because there's going to be a lot going on if I do that. So I'm just doing it this way. We can expect that it's going to return the array that is the component. All of the nodes should be in here. Now we want to guard this recursive step with an if statement, because if v is in visit, that means that this node has already been visited before, probably because it was connected to somebody else that we already visited, and therefore we can just continue. We can skip this node. Otherwise, we do this, and then we want to know. I'll write this code in a couple different ways, because this is kind of the easy part. Well, first of all, down here, we're just going to return the result. Result initially, I will say, is going to be 0, and also I will say I have a visit hash set, and this hash set will be accessible inside of this function, even though we don't pass it in there. I also could have declared an array out here and then not passed it in to the function, but I think it just makes it a little bit more clear here, since this result is only being used for this function, whereas the visit hash set, it's going to be used for all invocations of that function. But now, for all of these nodes, I want to do this. I guess I'll say v in component. I'm kind of reusing that, but I guess I'll call it v2. For v2 in component, all the vertices in there, I'm going to have a variable. I guess I'll just call it my flag. Initially, I'll set it to true, but if we ever see a node where this is not the case, if the length of the entire component minus 1 is not equal, I'll do not equal, to the length of the edges connected to v2, which I'm going to use an adjacency list for that. So adjacency list of v2. If this is not the case, we're going to set our flag to false, and we're going to break out of the loop. So then out here, we would know if my flag is true, that means my result is valid, and I can then increment the result. Now, this code will work. I promise you that it'll work, but if you want to join the Church of Python, let me show you a way you can make this code much more concise. I'll leave the code here because I'm basically going to replace it with a one-liner. If you are interested, Python has this function called all, so we're going to do this. If all. So we're going to pass in an array into this function, which I'm going to build in line. I'm going to go through pretty much what I did down there for every vertex in the component, vertice. And I guess I'll just copy and paste this and then change the equal sign. So if this is equal, so this is basically going to create an array of Booleans, like these Booleans, pretty much similar, except it's the opposite. And then it's going to check if everything in here is true. So this is checking the opposite. It's checking that it is valid. This was checking if it was invalid. So if this is true, well, then we don't even need a flag. We can just increment our result. So the time complexity of this code and this code is the exact same. It's just this is a bit more readable, in my opinion. But for you, it might be less readable. Anyways, I will leave that code there now. And the rest of this is just finishing up a relatively simple DFS. So now we will add the base case, of course, if v is already visited. If it's in the visit hash set, then we can return. Now, I could return the result here, but we would never expect of a function call from down here for us to return immediately from the base case. So you actually don't need that here. You can leave it there if you want, but it's not going to do anything, and I won't put it there. So next, If it's not visited, well, then we should probably add it to the visit hash set and then traverse the neighbors. So something like this. But before we do that, let's remember what we're trying to do in this function. We just want to collect every vertex. So here, before we return, or even before we go to the neighbors, let's add this node to the result. And
Hello. Hi guys, good morning. Welcome back to a new video. The graph, right? Any simple graph. So you're given a graph. Now again,
600 rejections. I want you to feel that for a second. 600 rejections and still not able to find a job. That's hard. That's tough. That's difficult. Hey, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Appreciate that.
The tech industry is kind of a mess right now. It's becoming increasingly hard for people to find jobs in tech. And it's particularly hard for any software engineers trying to get into tech right now, like bootcamp grads or recent computer science graduates. All of this.
I do think being a computer science graduate is much easier to find a job. And one of the big reasons why it's much easier to find a job is that typically you're going to have a career fair. I mean, for me, career fairs were widely consequential for me to be able to get what I needed to get. And I was very, very, very happy. That's how I got my job. A lot of people here will talk about the value of a career fair. And the big reason why career fairs are so nice is that you get a chance to talk to a human. And you get a chance to at least interact with one person. Career fairs have sucked, in my opinion. I think it's because you're not good at talking to people, right? Like, real talk, career fairs are amazing. You walk up, you get to talk to the person, you get to tell them how excited you are about this, that, and the other. And like, this is your one chance to not be an application in a system, but for somebody to take your application, write like, oh, that guy was pretty interesting, and then set it down. You know what I mean? Like, you actually get a chance to get filtered by not job recruiter and not computer system. You get filtered by another engineer. It's very, very good. That, for me, that was one of the best ways for me to get a job, was the career fair. I thought it was really, really good.
This made me think of a time in my life when I was struggling to get a software engineering job, where my happiness, my direction in life, and
The speed up and him breathing makes him look like he's having a panic attack. And he's talking about this direction and everything, and look at
my
him.
direction in life.
Dude, the man's having a panic attack as we talk. Okay, this isn't actually sped up. This is real life normal speed. Also, this is really bad for your neck. Okay, I know people that had to go to PT for quite some time because they actually shifted the connection point between their spine and their neck, like right here, and it like shifted forward, and the amount of like PT you have to go through by looking down like that is actually really bad. Tech neck, it's real. Don't do it. Like, really, don't sit like this. When you're young, it's easy. You can do it. But like, I hate to tell you this, but everyone becomes 30. Or you die really young. But mostly everybody becomes 30. You should try to embrace the neutral spine. You know what I mean? You should try to embrace that neutral spine. 30 or death, your choice. Your choice.
And my sense of self-worth were at an all-time low. This is the story
panic attack
of
is
the
really funny.
pain of finding my first software engineering job, my journey through it, and my advice to anyone stuck in the same situation.
Okay, let's go.
To get a grasp of the situation, we have to get a small glimpse of what I was like in college. Depending on
Okay.
which version of Kevin you encountered during his college years, you would have found vastly different mindsets. During
Absolutely, right? I mean, you're going from 18 to 22 if you're like a traditional college person. The level of stupid I was at 18 versus 22 is so vast. It's impossible to
True, buddy, true.
possibly put those two things together. Hey, Jetski, how you doing, buddy? I hope you're doing well.
my first year of college, I was primarily career focused. My main goal was to get a job at Facebook. By the time my fourth year had rolled around, though,
Guy clearly watched The Social Network. He saw whatever that actor's name get backstabbed, and he was like, hell yeah. I'm getting a job at Facebook. Honestly, I guarantee you that's probably what happened. And honestly, that movie also inspired me to make my first startup in 2008 or 2009, whenever it happened. I watched that movie, and afterwards I came out so horned up to make my own startup. I did a startup. It was awesome. It was fantastic. It actually got me so good at programming because I got, not Andrew Garfield, the other one, the Mark Zuckerberg's character, whatever his name is. I got so horned up to do a startup that it actually gave me all of the abilities that I got to be able to get a real job. And when I went to go to a real job and talk to people, man, people were so stoked because I actually had some sort of idea of like how to build big software at that point.
Here it is, my own startup.
I hyperfixated. Oh yeah, of course I hyperfixated. Yeah, I know
My
Andrew Garfield was the one that
priorities
gives the
had
backstab.
shifted significantly. Laziness and procrastination, those were the themes of my fourth year.
That is so funny. This is like, he literally has the exact opposite of story of me. I went into college and failed out due to drug usage. I went back to college, failed due to drug usage. And then I went back to college again, and then I didn't fail out due to drug usage. I actually became a star student, you know, and I became more and more motivated. And as I was able to start doing classes that were like the actual computer side of things, it made me so much more excited. By the time I was done with school, I wanted to be in school more. When I first started out, it was like all those stupid high school classes. I hated high school classes, right? College classes are just harder high school classes. Just the worst. But then you actually get into it. Did you ever go back for a master's degree? Yeah, I was partly into my master's degree before I started working at Netflix. Gen Eds and college are a scam. They're absolutely. I was getting my degree in ML. I was, or really AI, like traditional AI, because at that point, reinforcement learning was just starting to come around, and I hand worked and built a lot of like models and all that. I've shown this a couple times, but you know, I wear this as both as a badge of honor and as and also as a badge of shame. I wrote an entire neural network in old JavaScript. You can see this. This is an entire, look at that. You got that get calculated sigma, radial basis, function initialized, feed forward, backprop, error hidden. This is for a certain specific one with an RBF network because there's not really that kind of stuff. We got ANFIZ network, adaptive neural fuzzy inference systems. You know, like I was building we were building all the things, you know what I mean? Building all those things. Look at all that matrix bonanzas. Look at that matrix multiply. But why JavaScript? Because I was just learning JavaScript. And so, you know, I've always carried this mentality, which is you do the thing that you're trying to learn about, right? Like for me, I always build whatever I'm supposed to build in something that I'm trying to learn. And so it's like I did all this in JavaScript because I was just trying to learn JavaScript. I didn't know JavaScript. I didn't know how any of these things work. So I was trying to learn it. And so you can see like this is me learning it, right? I had no idea what I was doing. Prototype assign, like I'm out here assigning prototypes. My learning rate effed me over and over again. I'll tell you that much. I used, you know, but you got to remember, this was 11 years ago. Yeah, this was 11 years ago when I was getting my master's. You know, these are old days. Remember, the land of neural networks has genuinely changed. Okay, MLPs was the ways to be. Okay, and MLPs, you know, you're just doing like a little bit of back propagation of error rate, and it's just like pure calculations. You know what I mean? Require clusterfuck? Yeah, there was that. Wherever that was, there was clusterfuck. That was a real library. Okay, that was for doing k-means, right? For our clustering. Yeah, for doing all them sweet clusters. All right, let's get back to that thing. Anyways, I just had the exact opposite experience.
My attention was all over the place, and I didn't take time to plan my post-college life. Instead, I was distracted by other things, like socializing or making friends, and
Did he just do two groups of socializing and making friends as if those were different? Yeah, socializing or making friends? Suspicious. No, but anyways, like, I mean, I totally get this because you college does give you this illusion of being very meaningless. But by the way, WTF, no, really, this is how you get a job. Is you socialize and make friends. You just got to make friends in your group. I think there's this thing that happens to a lot of people where they go into programming and they're not dorks. Does that make sense? They're not dorks. They're not people that are like really into computers. And so then they're around other people that are dorks and they're like, ew, I want to go make real friends, right? And then they go off and they don't even realize, like, you just make friends with the people that are interested in the same things as you, and it actually makes, first off, you get friends for life, but two, you actually create like great networks where you guys can help each other get jobs. I think it's crazy. Like, you know, you should make friends with people who are like, who just are around you, trying to go out of your way to be like, oh, these guys are stupid while you're that person also. It's not going to help. I don't think he did this. I don't know if he did this. I'm not saying he did this. I'm just saying I've seen this happen. I watched it happen. I watched quite a few friends started off as really great students, and then they quit being our friends and been other people's friends, and their grades were all suffering, and they're trying to be like too cool. But you're getting a computer science degree, dog. You're a dork. You literally, you're like Bill Gates jumping over a chair. Okay, you're not awesome. It's okay, and it's okay not to be a dork. Like, socializing is how we got funding for your projects. It really is. Like, that's okay. Be Bill Gates jumping over the chair and just own it, man. No, the thing is that the thing that's worse is people who try to pretend like they're not that. Right? Go in there, armpits sweating, yelling something about like developers and just being okay with it. Like, that's 10 times better than the person that's really trying not to be that person, right? You're drinking your coffee before it was cool. You're hipstered out of your mind, right? Get out of here. I heard a great, I can't tell you the joke. Never mind, I can't tell you the joke. I can't tell you the joke until the 21st. I'll tell you the joke then.
Actively put off thinking about the future until it was too late. I didn't have any real software internship experience. I didn't know any web frameworks. I didn't know how to interview for software companies.
And by the way, that's a huge mistake. If you're in college, like, that's the goal of your junior year. Your sole goal of your junior year is not to get the best grades. Your sole goal is not to be the most social. Your sole goal is to find that effing career fair, talk to every last person you know, and you try to get that internship for three months. And if you can't get an internship for 3 months at some company, go to your school, try to do an internship for one of the grad programs, because they're always looking for people to build software for some sort of research project. There's like so many ways you can go about doing that, but you got to go hard, and you got to find that, because that's going to make such a big difference in your life. This is not, so I hate this. Honestly, I hate this. I guarantee you he was told 900 times to do these things. There wasn't a class that didn't go by my junior year where teachers weren't saying do these things. It's not school that fails people. It's people that fail people like 90% of the time. Like, you're right. There's some institutions that aren't good, but my guess is if you're at UCLA, you probably have really good teachers that are there trying to tell you how to do things. Yeah, he just told us he failed himself. Yeah, I feel bad for the guy because you know what? So many people do this. So many people do this. School is extremely outdated, though. You know what? I actually disagree with this take generally. The reason why I disagree with that take generally is that every single person that's coming out of a boot camp is immediately useful. They come out, they have all the skills to pay the bills. You know why? Because they know React, they know Tailwind, they're on Facebook, they built the MongoDB, right? They've done it all. I get it. They're immediately useful, but they have no direction and no foundation other than just building like these apps that are just immediately practical. So they have a lot harder thing to learn. They have to literally go outside of work and learn extremely boring, awful topics like compilers. Like, compilers is fun, but it's also really awful. Like, it's arduous once you get beyond any sort of amount. Like, you really have to be committed. You have to go out there and learn what operating systems. It's hard. You really have to think about these things. Oh, you want to learn like computer languages? Again, you have to go out there and really like read about how these things work. It's difficult, okay? And so to grow as a post-boot camp grad is really, really, really hard. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just really, really hard. A software engineer coming out, a CS student, sure, you're absolutely right. They're coming out the gates not nearly as useful. But you know what they do have? They have data structures down. They can tell you exactly why the HTML is the way the shape it is and why general trees make sense and how to walk general trees and how to do all those things, right? They get it. They get the time-space trade-offs that are happening, okay? Oh, they understand JavaScript. Why is it operating the way it is? Well, I've done a compilers class. I can tell you why this is not so efficient. I can tell you why these things happen. Sure, they're not as efficient, but they can tell you a lot more about the system. Of course, they can tell you about a general tree. Of course, they can tell you about compilers. Of course, they can tell you about these things. They just don't know how to practically apply them. 1 year on the job and they've applied a lot more knowledge, and it's easy to catch up. Like, this is not hard to be. This is not hard to do. This is why you can come out in 6 months. This is hard to do. This is why it takes many years. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it's perfect. I think they should teach some more practical, like it'd be great to have industry standard experience classes. Absolutely fantastic. It just makes it a lot easier to grow because you have foundation. Whereas I think these people come across without all that foundation. It makes it a lot harder to grow. Like, this gap is huge. This gap is hard. You know what I mean? Dude, a CS student that went through a boot camp is going to come out pretty animal. Like, they're going to be ready to kick some ass. They're going to come out pretty OP because they have all of that foundation. Plus, like, here's a bunch of modern standard things that, you know, startups are looking for. What about boot camp grads going to college? Honestly, I worry much more about boot camp grads going to college just because the first couple years are going to be really boring. Definitely try to test out and challenge courses. Like, you don't want to skip data structures. You don't want to skip discrete math or advanced data structures or any of those things. But you also have like a bunch of, you know what I mean? You also have a bunch of steps that you need to take that I think is going to be really difficult, that you're just going to find extremely boring, right? As a bootcamp grad, I 100% agree here. That's why I've worked super hard to fill the gaps. Yeah, I think you just have to work harder because I was stupid and someone just told me what to study and I passed a class, right? It means I just accidentally got lucky. It doesn't mean that, you know, the schools fails them in that they aren't getting practical experience. They used to. No. Actually, that is absurdly incorrect. College has always been for the rich person to learn how to leisure well. It's only recently changed. So no, school is not failing people. School has become more practical than it's ever been. I personally think like a good 2-year boot camp is like where things should be. Like, if you could have a good 2-year boot camp that really really hounds the data structures, pushes a good compiler course that really makes people learn learn Linux well, like, and makes them actually like useful, like trade school. I actually think computer science should be more of a trade school than it is a university thing. I think a trade school would be a lot better. I don't want to start a 2-year boot camp, honestly. The problem I have with that is that, I mean, I do want to start those kind of things. Of course I do. I think it'd be great, and I think I could be very successful at it. But I also think that it's really, really difficult. It would be very, very hard to do it successfully, and I'd want to do it the best as possible. And to do it the best as possible, it would be like a life's work, right? I'd have to take like a 1.5 years off just to focus on like how we need to set this thing. It would just take a long, long time to get it done well. And I wanted to be able to do it well. You know what I mean? You need a team of people. It'd be very hard. 2 years sounds good. I think that's how long it takes to do a CS without all the boring. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying, like, you could do the practical mix. Like, I would want someone coming out of my boot camp to have built some sort of Redis-like clone, to have built HTTP, to have built Git, that understands like these basic things, that have built servers, that have done stuff, right? But that also understands compilers, that have built their own DSL, that has executed it. Because here's the thing. If you have built your own DSL and your own compiler,
So let's stick to that. Just
This is an intermediate Git course taught by Tobias Gunther. He'll help you move beyond Git basics and improve your Git workflow.
hello, Free Code Camp friends. My name's Tobias, and I'm going to improve your Git knowledge today. There are a lot of beginner tutorials out there about version control with Git, but I will help you.
तो यहाँ पे मेरा ब्लॉब रेडी हो जाएगा, का यूज करेंगे। तो बनाने वाले को बात करने वाले गेट।
Hello everyone. Project. Definitely, you guys must have heard about the version our own project that Git is around the fact that I already uploaded a video where I talked about how Git internally works. That is a prerequisite for this particular project. Around basics of JavaScript in
Hello, my name is Travis, and I'm a noob just like you. That's what makes me the perfect candidate to present this video series called GitHub for Noobs.
Okay, so welcome. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome Professor Oosterhout for this Talks at Google presentation. My name is Partha Ranganathan. I work in Technical Infrastructure Cloud. Very quick intro to John to get things started here. John is a professor of computer science at Stanford University. He spent, before that, 14 years in industry, where he founded two companies, Cryptix and Electric Cloud, and before that, 14 years as a professor at UC Berkeley. Anybody here who has taken a class with John before? So a bunch of his students as well. So he's pretty distinguished, so I'm not going to go through a list of his awards here. Member of the National Academy of Engineering, ACM Software System Award, UC Berkeley Distinguished Teaching Award, to name a few here. But more relevant to this talk,
When you're at work and someone says, we should make a DSL for this, you can say, first off, slow down. You don't know anything about compilers. Let's take a step back, okay? Do we really want a DSL? I've made a DSL, and I can tell you right away that they're extremely difficult, they're hard to maintain, and they can be emotionally painful. So maybe we should really think about this decision before we do it, and if we do it, I have the experience at least to do something with it. I suggest if we truly need something, let's consider some sort of alternative, such as Apple's new configuration language, Lua, anything. DSLs are probably not the way to do it. Just throwing that out there. What is a DSL? A domain-specific language. Like, DSLs are great. I get it. DSLs can solve problems uniquely, but it can also be a huge pain in the ass. An example of a DSL is the following. I can go like this. I can go set, what is it? Something inside here, right? So I can set something in here. This is actually a DSL. Set is a keyword that sets a property in Vim for you to do something. It also has the exact same thing. You can also do all those things via Lua now. Lua is really, really nice. Lua is a language I can look up how to use. Lua has lots of documentation. Lua has been well supported. VimScript, well, you better hope that you can find your problem. You better hope that you're not experiencing some weird edge case. You better hope that it's not poorly thought through, right? Like, that's the problem about DSLs. And VimScript is going to be a much better DSL than anything you write. I just want you to know that. And VimScript is horrible. And it's better than anything you will create. VimScript, it's 0 and 1 indexed. Why? Because fuck you, programmer. I don't know. That's why. All right, let's keep on going. Sorry, that was a long tangent.
And I hadn't studied a single question of LeetCode or cracking the coding interview. This lack of foresight.
By the way, that is that's one thing that's really good about college, because you should have gotten a really intense data structure classes. Doing good at data structure classes, you will always be able to do most LeetCode questions just off the rip. Because you can, most LeetCode questions, most cracking the coding interview questions are just things you studied in college. They're just like, they're just that. And so the only thing that I think really is good about LeetCode questions, by the way, is going to be DP questions, which you don't typically study in college, or you do very little. And two, using arrays to solve problems. Often you're not using like arrays to store a graph. Most people use like an adjacency list. They don't lean into the adjacency matrix. And sometimes it's really, really difficult to use a bunch of arrays. Like Cityscape is just an exercise in how well you understand arrays, not really anything else. And so, that's one of those like leak code nice things is that when you get onto a whiteboard, you're just like, oh, yeah, I can do arrays really easily. I've used them a whole bunch. I'm pretty good at this stuff. You know what I mean?
It all came back to haunt me on the day
I've had the
of
red
my
link list several
graduation.
times.
For most people, graduation is a moment of triumph. It's like the culmination of years of hard work. And
I felt very sad graduating. I felt like when Frodo comes back to the Shire, it's just not home anymore. It's an end of an era. It's an end of an era. And I felt really sad about that. You know what I mean? Because I knew it was over. Yeah, if you get a paper, you don't get a job. And so for me, that was like hard. It was really hard because I knew that I don't know what the next era is, but it is the next era. And that was hard. That was a hard moment for me.
moving on to the next stage of your life. But for me, that day was the saddest moment I had experienced up until that point in my life. Looking back, I realized that
so I do have to say one last thing. The fact that Saruman was Sharky, I still, to this day, I can't believe there's a bad guy named Sharky in Lord of the Rings. I just felt like that was kind of weird. Okay, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say about that. We're moving on.
I had barely changed since the first day I walked onto campus. My work ethic was still terrible. My social skills were terrible. And I hadn't achieved the goals that I set out to achieve. And worst of all, I was not ready for this next phase in my life. And I knew that I was about to be forced into a deep, dark time before anything got better for me personally or professionally. I moved home.
I do think I do think our society in general, at least Western society, does encourage more adolescence longer. And I do think a lot of these issues are extended adolescence issues. You know, I had the greatest misfortune and the greatest fortune to be able to grow up fast. And I do think that helps, is having some of that growing up fast, because, you know, you skip 10 years of doinking around till you realize what you really want to do. And I do think that helps a lot. Again, I attribute a lot of it to being in the right place at the right time, you know, but self-drive and discipline is incredibly important. Absolutely.
Home from college about 3 months after graduation. And at the time, I had not even begun to understand the weight of the position that I was in. I had no job prospects lined up. And even worse, I hadn't even made an effort to secure one. My resume? Unimpressive, to say the least. But I remember hearing about the intense demand for software engineers at that time and all the years previously.
One in the chat if you're kind of in this guy's shoes. I'm actually just curious. One in the chat if you're in this guy's shoes. Damn, y'all. Well, you're currently a student, so learn from this mistake, right? Twitter's dead. Twitter died.
Tricked myself into believing that my computer science degree alone would be enough to land me a job. I mean, I spent 4 years in college, right? Surely that was enough to secure my future. A piece of wisdom that I've learned in the past few years. There are only 2 ways people change. People either change after deep self-reflection and self-improvement, or they are forced to change by circumstance. And this circumstance was about to hit my life very, very soon. At the time,
Base take. You know, the point 1 on his take is wisdom, right? The ability to make those self-reflection, the ability to make change before disaster happens is really like that is the mark of a wise person. I, unfortunately, have rarely been a wise person. I've had a few moments in my life where I have done number 1, but for the vast majority, I've done number 2. Unfortunately, I'm that guy. I learn best by getting into horrible situations. You're still wise. If you can learn from a mistake, if you can learn from your mistake, you're still wise.
It couldn't be that hard to get in, could it? But as I started applying to jobs, I realized just how misguided I really was. I submitted
By the way, he also has that UCLA. Hopefully that really puts things into perspective. I had Montana State University, okay? I do want to throw something out there. When people think of prestigious schools, or UC Irvine, okay, whatever. He had a school that people think tends to be a little bit more impressive than Montana State University. Just to be real there, okay? No one thinks Montana State University is going to be, Montana's not even a state that exists, okay? There's California, Texas, and New York City. That's the 3 states in America. And credentialism did not help him here. So that is really something you should really think about. Montana mentioned, let's go. You should really think about that credentialism is not going to help you. I even think the day of graduating from, MIT and these top schools, I even think that in itself is also falling apart. I think that it doesn't get you anywhere anymore, right? Credentialism is gone. And so you should really, we are more towards a meritocracy in some sense because we're dropping that. So
10 applications my first week.
I'm not saying it, by the way, I'm not actually saying that's good or bad. I think there is something that's good about credentialism because we should have a place we can look to say people that come out of this are really, really good. And if that's falling apart, there's something kind of sad about tradition and that kind of stuff, right? There is something sad about that. And I do mean that. There is a sad part to it. It's not 100%. Whenever someone says, no, that's 100% bad, I'm like, not all things are 100% bad. There's sometimes a good part to that. I'm not saying it's great. As an average Montanan enjoyer, I did not get to enjoy a drop of credentialism. You know what I mean?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Yelp, thinking that they were easy targets while I worked.
Ooh, Yelp. Ugh. Yelp might just be the single worst tech company. Okay? I understand there's some really shady tech companies out there, but Yelp just might be top 3 most evil companies. Like, dude, the extortion that they do on small businesses is crazy, okay? It's crazy. They extort companies, like they genuinely do. Ooh, Yelp is like a local rating service, right? You know how when you go and you search up a restaurant and it's like, this restaurant has 3.5 stars. That's either like Google ratings or Yelp ratings. And Yelp is it's pretty bad. Better Business Bureau also, like anytime, like the thing is anytime you find a rent seeker, you also have found something that's likely hyper corrupt. Anything that sits in between two things often can be quite corrupt.
My way up to big companies, and then
like
I waited a
TripAdvisor,
week.
yeah,
okay,
probably the same
so
thing.
I applied to a few more jobs that I thought were in my skill level, like Dropbox, Groupon, Intuit. But again,
remember Groupon?
The results were the same. Nothing. For someone
Groupon
who had
these
been
nuts, let's
so
go!
naive, so deluded, and so used to getting what I wanted, this came as a surprise. My degree was not enough to get me hired. I even remember this one instance, 2 months after moving back home. I managed to secure an interview with a company in Southern California. And the whole time going through the interview process and the recruiter screens, I thought getting the job would be easy. I didn't spend any time preparing for this interview. And instead, I focused on learning how to negotiate my salary. And as you can
I mean, at least he's coming in with confidence. You know, like one thing can be said in life, being confident is a good thing. You know what I mean? Hey, yo. I do want to say, I'm not here to knock on this guy. This guy is like a bunch of kids. This guy represents an entire class of people, right? I'm not here to dunk on him. I think this is fantastic, right? Like, dude, I thought you could just drop LSD and smoke a little bit of meth and also have a great family life at some point. Okay, I'm not Mr. Outstanding, okay? It took me a while to get here, okay? I was just as deluded as this guy, just happened to be a different set of delusion. You really can't. Like, you genuinely can't do those things. Yeah, it could. I mean, genuinely, you could be right. It could be. It's one of the things that I think about all the time, which is kids growing up in a situation in which they have money, right? Sometimes it can delude them to think that life just comes easily, right? But this is great. I really like this story.
didn't expect I didn't get the job. And in fact, I wasn't even close. I remember hanging out and talking with my friends afterwards.
It had to hurt a
We were
little
grabbing a beer. I was talking about my interview, downplaying the situation, talking about how I didn't want to work there anyway. And as I wrapped up my story...
And by the way, that didn't even matter, bro. That is literally the sorry bro for the person. Dude, it's cope. It's pure copium. It's beautiful.
My friends just quietly acknowledged it, changed topics, and then we moved on. I couldn't really understand at the time why my friends were so quiet in response to my story. But now I can see how clueless and delusional I was, and just how badly I struggled with self-awareness and humility. I see now.
By the way, I would just throw it out there. Not necessarily good friends. You know, like a good friend will be honest with you. Yeah, rotating phaser. You're literally right as I'm saying. A good friend will, like, you know, like a good friend won't do it in front of people. A good friend the next day will talk to you, right? Like, if you're in a group of people, you should never call out somebody unless if it's like that egregious. But generally, a good one-on-one conversation, if you actually think someone's being deluded, like a good friend will take the time to be like, yo, dog, like this ain't good. You know what I mean? This ain't good. Okay, Benjamin Franklin. Okay, Aristotle with your friendship definitions. Mr. Aristotelian guy over here.
Now, how I came off to them. Here was this kid who hadn't paid his dues in life. He didn't have a job. He hadn't worked hard or accomplished anything of note. And he had a right to complain about job prospects. No one was going to tell me how misguided my thinking was. It was up to me to figure.
By the way, someone should have. Again, good friends would tell you that you're goofing up. Okay? I mean, for me, in fact, that statement right there is actually more of a condemnation of the people he was surrounded with than himself, right? You're equally deluded if you think friendship is just about having good times. Like, that's no real friend. It just isn't. That's not a real friend. That's a chum. That's a bud, right? That's not real. Facebook friends act this way. Exactly. You're a Facebook friend in real life.
Figure it out on my own. In the next few months, my job search became increasingly difficult. I was not aware that
fair weather friends,
most companies tend to slow down their hiring process at the end of October in preparation for the holiday season. This was something that caught me completely off guard. And the true...
Welcome to the real world, bitch! I mean, that does happen. It's very, very true. Typically, you don't want to change a lot right before the holiday season.
True pressure of the situation began to set in. It had been nearly 5 months since I graduated college, and I wasn't even close to getting a job. I found myself submitting dozens of job applications per day.
I wonder if he was building things. He hasn't addressed it, I don't think. He's talking about I wonder if he was like building things. Like, how was he preparing, or what was he doing to change? I hope that he covers that, because that's like my big thing I keep thinking about was, what was the moment?
While going through online forums, Reddit, or just any...
Someone is asking, well, curious about real friends. Dude, just go Aristotelian on it, right? You got to have location, proximity of things you enjoy, and ability to have tough conversations, right? It's pretty simple. Like, it's really hard to be long distance friends. It just is. It's just simply like, if you don't live near each other, if you can't see each other, it does become harder. If you don't have shared interest, it becomes even harder. It just does. Like, that's like, just like, I mean, dude, some dude 2,000 years ago with a beard and marble statue said that. He's probably right. Good friends aren't common.
Anything to look for advice on how to get a job. I was told to study LeetCode, to learn web frameworks, to build side projects, to network with other people for referrals. And I just began to get completely overwhelmed by the number of things I needed to do to get a software job. And I realized there were people out there that studied 10 times harder for 10 times longer and still were unable to get a job. And despite
this, I mean, I say this all the time, which is like, if you're not willing to go really deep and really hard, wow, like, just remember, there's always someone that's willing to work harder than you. Now, you don't have to be the hardest worker. You don't have to be the most aggressive learner. But there's always somebody that is willing to go harder than you, that their life circumstance is more desperate than yours. And desperation will make people work much harder. But you just got to understand that when going into it, which means that you have to be willing to put in some hours. I 100% couldn't be the engineer I am today without the countless weeks of 80 hours. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's the way life should be. But there's also a reality to the situation.
Me submitting hundreds of applications, I received very few responses. In the month of December, I was able to secure 2 on-site interviews with startup companies in San Francisco. In one of the interviews, the interviewer ended my technical screen early, probably because of my performance. And
as someone who's given many interviews, including many at Netflix, hundreds at my previous job, you just got to understand, when someone says, hey, you know, I'm not too sure about this. Why are you using that? Or some phrase like that, right? What they're saying to you is, hey, man, you aren't doing this right. Let's take a step back. Let's try to think of a new way to approach the problem. Current way, skill issues. Okay? You're skill issuing hard right now, and I'm giving you like a little warning, a little red flag that you're skill issuing. Let's walk back a little bit.
Instead, opted into having a friendly conversation with me. He asked me the question, so what did you do in school? I knew what he was asking me. Failing interviews, it was painful, but that was nothing compared to seeing the disappointment in my parents' eyes. I couldn't help but think of the sacrifices they made to immigrate to this country, working hard to attend school here.
The Asian moment, people talk about, I've heard many people talk about this. You know, that's one thing that I love about my mom. She was so proud of me that I wasn't using drugs, right? Like that was like, she was so happy. You know, and there's something magical about having a parent that just loves you. You know, even when you're still a disappointment, they still love you. You know what I'm talking about? There's something very, very nice about that.
To find a job here and to leave everything behind, to make a better life for their children. And as I struggled to find a job, as I submitted 600 job applications to almost every company I could find in the state of California, I couldn't help but feel like I was letting them down. And at the same time, letting myself down. People don't change.
It's real right there.
Unless they go through a heavy amount of self-reflection or they are forced to by circumstance. Ironically, this whole situation about me not being able to find a job, it was jarringly similar to an experience I had just 4 years previously. Instead of a job search, I was in high school and I was trying to get into top colleges. I had spent most of my high school years procrastinating, neglecting my grades.
I typically like to brag that I did one day of homework in all of high school. I got a 2.16, not a big deal. Not a big deal. NBD. There's reasons why I may have gone to Montana State University. Just throwing that out there.
I had a mediocre at best college application, and yet I thought I had a chance to apply and get into top colleges because that's what my friends were doing. And when the time came to receive college acceptances, I found myself rejected by almost every school I applied to. I remember one of my SAT tutors sat me down and told me to never put myself in a situation where I wasn't preparing for the future ever again. And while some of that message might have stuck with me for a bit, obviously none of it stuck long term. People don't change unless they are forced to change.
There's some, you know, it's funny that he remembers that statement. Isn't it funny how sometimes you'll have those moments with somebody where they say something to you and you know it's good advice, but it like, there's this old adage that says the greatest distance in the universe is the distance between your head and your heart. And sometimes it's true, you know? Sometimes it takes, you know, like, sometimes you can hear the exact thing you need and it's just so long before it actually makes it to the right spot. It's crazy. Is that a phrase from Romeo and Juliet? Maybe. I can't remember where I heard it, but it is actually, it's an extremely good phrase. You know what I mean? It's an extremely good phrase because I know, besides for the people that are like, which head? Like, I know you guys are memeing, but I'm just trying to be real here for a second, Twitch chat. Can you get your
perfect candidate? But none of that happened. Truly what happened came down to numbers and luck. Applying for jobs, it will always be a numbers game. This,
by the way, this thing,
trying to create side projects to put on my resume, trying to learn React, trying to read through cracking the coding interview. And finally, in January of 2017, I received a call from a tiny 5-person startup located in San Diego. I was lucky enough to be asked technical questions in fields that I had prepped pretty well in the last few months. And even luckier,
nothing's better when you get asked a direct question word for word out of cracking the coding interview. So let's just pretend you had a singly linked list and you wanted to find a cycle in it. And you're just like, oh, really? I've never heard this. Tell me about it. Well, if I were a thinking man, which clearly maybe I am, I would assume that you'd probably want, like, it's almost like I could envision like a tortoise and a hare. And like one thing being able to speed fast while something else goes slow. And at some point, if there is a cycle, it's going to intersect. Gosh dang, I am smart. Never even heard of this question before. In fact, I'm not even sure what a tortoise or a hare is. I just know they exist, and I manifested this wisdom in the interview.
This company was looking for a very specific profile of software engineer. Someone who was a new college grad, someone who could code and figure out problems, and someone who was willing to take a low salary. And so this was my
I took a low salary.
So far removed from my original delusions of working for Facebook or some startup unicorn. But after the months of failure, nothing was sweeter than this sense of success I had in the moment.
By the way, this is a great reminder that the pull yourself up by the bootstraps, though obviously everyone's like, oh, you're going to be toxic. Yeah, okay, shut up. There is something also really amazing about accomplishing something yourself. Being able to like get out there and do it and persist and get that W and know that you're the one that is trying to really push for that W. There is something about that that's really good. Like it really has made me feel like those are some of the things that makes me feel very good. You know what I mean?
Sometimes I think of the scenario of if I didn't get that job offer. I wonder how long I would have been searching before I finally found one. A couple more months? 6 months? A year? A couple years? Would I have just given up? It's difficult to tell, but it was definitely one of the first lessons in my life about how incremental progress every day helps you to reach your goal. If I wasn't studying LeetCode, learning web frameworks, applying to jobs little by little every day, even this random stroke of luck, it wouldn't have panned out. If you found...
Again, it's not because it's luck, it's opportunity, okay? That's hard work, meets an opening, and you're already ready for it, okay? It's hard for me to call it, like I understand that there's luck involved, the fact that you saw it, but luck is not always just luck. You know what I mean? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, exactly. It's just like, you see these things and it's just like, I love this part, this last part, right? Where it's just like the perceived value of daily grind isn't really there, but what really is happening is you're growing up and you're actually getting better faster. And like so much of this is just all that hard work coming together. It's beautiful.
Found my story relatable in any capacity, you need to be the reason to make a change for yourself in life. At a certain point, no one will push you, no one will say anything to you, no one will force you to do anything. You will have to do it yourself willingly, or be forced to by painful circumstance.
That's a thumbs up. Oh, I must have already watched a video by him. Great video, by the way.
Hi guys, good morning. In this video, we're going to start with... Hi guys, good morning. So in the last video, we saw about connected component. But the video was already... In the last... Hi guys, good morning. So in the last video, we saw about BFS, very standard traversal algorithm. Now we will see the 5 types of problem we actually encounter in a BFS algorithm when we see the problem related to the BFS algorithm. So before moving on to the first problem,
कंपनी में गया इंटरव्यू देने तो बोला कि सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन, अगर आपके अंदर पेशेंस है, आप ईमानदार हैं, एक जगह टिके रह सकते हैं, आप एग्री करते हैं तो हम इसका प्रमाण दीजिए। तो कहा तुम आरसीबी के फैन है। कहा तुम सेलेक्ट कि आप 18वां सीजन में सेलेक्ट आ गए।
मतलब आप इतने लॉयल है तो लॉयल रहेंगे कंपनी के साथ।
किसके फैन है भाई?
चेन्नई भाई, चेन्नई, ऑलवेज चेन्नई, सदियों से भाई लॉयल।
साथ उसके खड़े रहो जिसके अंदर कुछ कमियां हो।
लेकिन जो कमियां हैं वो दूर भी तो नहीं कर रहे इतने समय से। 18 साल होने को आया। 18 समझते हो? गलती एक बार होता है, 2 बार होता है, 18 साल नहीं ना होता है। तो हम तो हैं अपनी टीम के साथ। जब नहीं जीता था तब भी हम उसी के साथ थे।
That I have compiled a list of BFS algorithm problems, so you can just have this whole list linked down below. I'll just update this list for every algorithm whatsoever I'll teach. The problem list
created. Well,
will be entirely this PDF, and what we're gonna see in the next videos is like the first type, which is actually the simple BFS traversal, the second type, which is actually the implicit graph BFS traversal, which means okay, the matrix is given to you and you have to do a BFS traversal on that matrix. Next, you will see a multi-source BFS, where actually rather than starting from one node, you will be starting from multiple nodes. Then we will see the BFS with bit masking. It's a hi-fi way of saying that we can visit one node more than one time. In a BFS, we actually visit a node once, right? But here we can actually visit a node more than once. And the last but not least would be problems in which both a BFS and a DFS is applied, but we will study all these kind of problem like this one, especially which includes DFS ones after we study DFS. So we will see in the next coming lectures about these 4 standard problems which we actually encountered, which are related to BFS. Let's start with the first one, and it is very standard, very basic BFS algorithm problems where just straight it is being applied. But forget for now that you know a BFS is being applied here. I'll just let you know, okay, how it starts, what actually made us think that, okay, now a BFS is being applied here. So just clear your mind, okay, you don't know anything like BFS was going to be applied in this problem. Just make sure of that. I have to tell you because I just wanted to let you know what is upcoming in the next lectures, and also that you have this practice problem set which you can actually practice by your own. So yeah, without further ado, let's start with this problem. So basically, first I have just picked a very easy problem. Find if the path exists in a graph. It is a problem which can be done by either BFS or DFS. Although we have not studied DFS, but in the next lecture, like in the next upcoming lecture, we will study about DFS also, which is depth first search, and after that you will be able to solve it. But it can be solved by both BFS and DFS, and it's a problem which we actually see when we will actually study DFS. So yeah, I just let it, but still. As you have understood about BFS in the last video, I highly recommend to solve this by your own. But we will see the next problem, which is snakes and ladders. The problem statements is pretty big. I'll just explain you by the example itself. We are just having a matrix as a snakes and ladders game, in which you will start from the node 1, and you have a dice in your hand. You will just roll the dice. Whatsoever value will come in your dice, you can just move number of steps ahead, because a dice can have at max 6 values. So I can just get from 1 to 2, which means I can jump 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, 4 step, 5 step, and 6 step, which means from every cell I can reach to next 6 cells. It is how it is done. And as we know that there is a twist in this moving game. What is that? The twist is the ladders and the snakes, which means if I move one step which means if my dice rolls are 1, so I should have reached 2, but I have a ladder from 2 to 15, so I just reach 15 rather than staying at 2. It is the twist in this snakes and ladders game. It's a very famous, very standard, very basic game. You must have played. And the same goes that, okay, if anyhow I reach the node, let's say 17, there's no chance I'm going to stay at that place. The snake will bite me and will reduce my value to what? To actually 13. And here also, if I'm at 14, I will have used the ladder and I'll reach 35. What I might ask is that, okay, how many minimum number of steps? Let's see. What are the least number of moves required to reach the node n square? I know I'm starting from 1. My operation is to move in one step. I can move these 6 nodes. In the next step, I can move, like in the next step from 5, I can move to the next 6 nodes, which is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. So, and how many least number of steps I can actually reach this last node, which is 36. It is a problem, which is what it is saying. Now, if we clearly look at the input itself, input itself is saying that, okay, how the matrix will look like. -1 is nothing but, okay, no snakes or no ladders. The value indicates, okay, from this cell right here, this cell, as the cell is 2, we know.
कल पढ़ेंगे भाई